How's it going, guys? IS5 is right around the corner, and I thought I would give you guys the best operators to pick from for IS5 because, we went through a lot of the trial and error phase in CN version, and, I hope I can save you guys some times. So first of all, there are a few things that I have to mention. First is that this list is mainly for IS5 D15, and then later on there will be D18. So the highest difficulty content. This is for all the endings. So ending 1, 2, 3, even ending 4 and 5 in the future. This is like for that top tier stuff. So if you just want to like reference it, obviously you can, and if you just want to go with like your favorite operator, if you're not going for like hardest content, you can still do so. But if you're going for like the top level content, this is a easy way for you to know and go through less of that trial and error that we had to go through in CN. Second of all is this is just a rough list, so it's not supposed to like have all these strategies. So there are some strategies that is beyond my capabilities and just outside of the meta. If you can work outside of the meta, that is definitely the best for you, and just have fun with the game your way. Trust me, because as long as you know your operators, there's always a way to figure it out. This is just for those who just got in and still don't have like much idea of how IS5 works. So this is just for those who just want to step in earlier and then can learn the mode a bit faster and then figure out their own strategy as they go through. Second of all, you'll see a lot of 4-stars, and that's because starting from IS5, all 4-stars are now free to pick up. So they're all 0 hope to pick up, no matter the difficulty. So even if you're at like max difficulty or 0, it's all the same, 0 hope to grab. So you'll see way more 4-stars because you naturally just won't be grabbing 3-stars anymore. So that's the reason. And at last, we are going through 8 classes. So I will leave timestamps down below. So if you need to check back on some of these operators later on, you can. So without further to say, oh, one more thing. There is a specific operator that I cannot add in because I'm using the EN version of the game to record this video, but we are getting Tin Man as a free operator for this mode. And if you can, raise him ASAP because he's a must grab. He's like the first operator that you probably want to grab throughout the game. So highly recommend you guys to raise Tin Man. All right, all that out of the way, I think we can begin with our operators list. Starting first, of course, with vanguards. So for vanguards, most of the time you will be picking a vanguard at the start when you don't have hope, and that will most likely going to be Myrtle or Beanstalk. The reason we have Beanstalk here is because her ability to provide a block early on, and her skill 2 can actually spawn those crabs, right? And there are some stages early on where if you use those crab spawning ability, like her skill 2 well, you can squeeze some enemies off like into holes and solve some of those tougher enemies. So that is a really nice to have. And there are a lot of early on stages that are really nasty, and having that extra block just in case is really handy. So highly recommended. With Ines and Cantabile, basically Ines is just, as always been really good ever since the beginning. But Cantabile is actually back because the whole agents class in IS5 actually scales really well with a lot of collectibles. We get a lot more collectibles this time around because of the nature of IS5, and you will easily get a ton of attack speed and whatnot. So getting Cantabile for that early on DP burst is really easy. So the whole agent class, I would say, works really well in IS5. Your traditional 2-block vanguards just not really worth the effort anymore. If you must, you can grab them just to block enemies a little bit, but enemies hit really hard this time around. So operators like Fang just aren't able to tank like 2 hits or something. She'll just be taken down instantaneously. Not really worth it unless you just have way too many vanguard tickets and you just want to grab something. Then grab your courier and whatnot just as a temporary block if you must. So that's it for vanguards, nothing new. Next, let's talk about guards. So first 6-star guard, obviously Manar. I don't think there's anyone that would question that. But the other 6 stars are the interesting ones. So as you can see, I have Olpianus and Hodor, and I don't think anyone is, well, surprised that Olpianus is here. When Olpianus came out, there was a lot of hype for him, and if you get a lot of initial SP collectible with Hodor's skill 3, you can basically instantly use it and then retreat him, and then you use that initial SP buff. I think a lot of people has already done that in IS4, so I don't think there's much to explain about that with IS5. But Hodor, on the other hand, is completely out of the, like, not something that people were expecting, in my opinion. The thing is, his skill 2 paired with a lot of collectibles that will increase your attack speed and debuff duration, allows him to basically hard control, perma control the ending 4 boss, like solo. And there are a lot of really nasty like late game stages that Hodor actually works really well with. Especially there's this stage in floor 6 where Hodor works specifically well with. So he's actually a good pick in the later game. But earlier game though, I would still say Olpianus is more versatile in more other stages. And there are some like crazy moves that you can use with Olpianus, because in general the maps in IS5 are just way bigger, and you can have him fly across the map and back all the time and defending multiple lanes and whatnot, and stun like enemies that have like really high range attacks and whatnot, and just stun them in place permanently with Olpianus without him ever getting harmed by them. So Olpianus and Hodor are actually both really well made in IS5. Now Chobai is actually a really interesting choice here, but I would say for those of us that do use Chobai to just knows that with her module, she actually is a great damage dealer. Her ability to stall as well makes her a really good choice in this specific situation. She wouldn't be my first pick, not even my second or third pick, because those would go to Olpianus and whatnot. But Chobai is actually definitely on the list for me, in my opinion, to be one of those really nice picks. And as you can see, I have Tachanka, just because no one can say no to Tachanka when he has the ability to burst down ending 4 boss, which is basically considered one of the hardest boss when DLC does come out. And yeah, Tachanka's ability to just burst that boss down easily, just nothing is comparable. And obviously our 4-star bracket would be Utage. She's actually just really well made when it comes to having the ability to just grab her for free and then just plot her down and just take out some really nasty enemies really quickly. And there are some enemies that you do want a hearts damage for further details. Go through the official post, you will understand why. But Utage is actually really important to have. If you don't have other like operators to grab, you just got a guard ticket. Who else to pick? Utage is probably your easiest pick in my opinion. So that's it for guards. So for defenders, we have Shu, Horn, and then the 4 stars. So Shu, obviously without a question, one of the best defenders now we have, especially when it comes to her teleportation capabilities, and then just healing as well. So that's the reason why not to grab her. She solved a lot of mechanics in boss fights as well. And when it comes to Horn, you're really using her as your ranged DPS instead of trying to let her tank. So you probably won't be using her skill 2 as much. It's mostly just skill 3. And with that, she does a lot of damage, and I would highly recommend you to raise Horn if you haven't yet. I personally just have my Horn M9 because, you know, she's just that versatile. Skill 1 for like the one-shot damage. So if you want to have high damage per shot, like with your spinach type of collectibles, she works really well. And then skill 3 is just good burst damage. Now the 4 stars, between Korra and Gumi, you will be choosing as your first defender. If you have Armia medic form to begin with, you can go with Korra, but most of the time you will be starting with Gumi, even though I do believe that because enemies hit way harder in IS5, even Gumi just won't survive a lot of the times, like in floor 2 and whatnot. And just having that extra tanking capability from Korra would be really handy. So if you do happen to already have Armia Alta, just... And finally, our first range operator class. So snipers, I don't think there's anyone that has any questions why Wizardel is on there. And when it comes to us Ray players, I think it is quite obvious that Ray deserves to be on here just for her ability to snipe off those really nasty bosses and elites. And there will be bosses even in normal stages this time around, so having Ray is actually really important. But Rosmontis is on here not for Rosmontis right now, but when she gets her IS specific module, then you will be probably willing to bring Rosmontis with you. Before that, you wouldn't really need her. The thing about that module is that she gives the ability to place down those pillars for every sniper and caster that you deploy. So basically, with all these like cheap snipers then that you can have just pillars all over around the map, which is really strong. Now, for the same class as Wizardel, Grey Alta is actually a really important operator to have, just because we can easily get the hand for the class. So Wizardel and Grey Alta, you can both, and Rosmontis actually, you can easily get the hand, and him having ability to slow enemies plus hit true AoE. And there's a lot of maps that has a ton of enemies this time around. Like you will see a lot of maps that has easily over 100 enemies this time around. So having him to be able to slow them and then true AoE is really nice, and at the cost of just one hope to grab if you're using the right like class, the right squad. So Grey Alta is a really nice to have if you can, and there's no other way around it. Oh wait, is it one hope if you're using the sniper squad? I kind of forgot for a moment, but yes, really worth grabbing no matter what class you're playing. And Cruise Alta is just one of those operators that just scales with it really well if you have a lot of collectibles, and naturally you just have a lot of collectibles in IS5, so Cruise Alta is definitely on there. The really important ones are the 4 stars. So I have both May and Meteor both on here, and usually you would only pick May at the early game, but why I also put Meteor on there is because her ability to decrease enemies' defense will actually come into play in a lot of later game stages if you don't have a good decreased defense and you're lacking some of those attack collectibles. So Meteor, just in case if you don't have anyone else better, you can just bring her to E1 level 70 and just skill level 7. That's fine for now. And then later on, if you really find the need, you know, E2 just for those skill masteries, that's also a thing, but I think E1 is perfectly fine when it comes to Meteor. May though, her abilities to slow is really important, and you do want some of those ability to slow enemies down also early on in the game. So that would be snipers, and I would say in IS5 general, you do want to be able to pick up Wizardel early on if you don't know the game that well. You know, Wizardel obviously just mostly finishes off the game. Just don't forget, you do want to level all 3 of her skills. Skill 2 scales way better with collectibles, so if you have a lot of attack speed, you'll switch to Wizardel skill 2. And then there's this floor 6 map that is really hard to beat, and if you have a lot of good collectibles, that's when Wizardel skill 1 comes in, because you kind of want skill 1 for that stage. That stage requires consistent damage because there's a huge bunch of, like whole bunch of enemy all coming one way, and Wizardel is basically the only operator defending that lane as well. So yeah, just for that stage, Wizardel skill 1 M3 as well. That's snipers. Casters. So I think it's without a doubt that we will see Nymph here, and yes, she is kind of a must-have in my opinion, not just for her skill 3 being able to deal elemental damage. It's actually not that at all. It's her skill 2. There will be a new node in IS5 where Nymph basically completely destroys that node, that combat node, and you definitely do want to bring her if you don't have Wizardel or like some other like really OP damaged operators, because Nymph just outright deletes those stages. Logos, I don't think there's any question about that. Logos is just really strong. Golden Glow is actually one of those operators that I would only recommend in the really late game when you have a lot of good collectibles. So similar to IS4 actually, but again, in IS5, you just naturally get a lot more collectibles, and the chance of them being really good for her also much likelier. So yeah, I would actually recommend Golden Glow only after you've gotten like a really strong game to begin with, and then you can pick up Golden Glow and then just enjoy the rest of the game. Armia Caster does appear, and not only just once, but she'll actually appear 2 times. So the good thing about Armia is you can pick her up in any of the 3 squads. So Vanguard Guard Squad, Specialist Caster Squad, and Sniper Medic Squad. And all of them will make her really cheap to recruit. And obviously you will be using her on the fly. The reason I didn't really introduce her guard form is actually because you wouldn't be really using her guard form to begin with. The enemies in IS5 does limit the guard form of Armia by quite a bit. So you will only be going between the caster form and the medic form most of the time. And then there's the 4 stars. So Click is most likely our most likely pick. You will just be picking up Click most of the time. If you're using a Wizard or Sergeant, most likely you'll be going with Click. There will be these okay, a bit of a spoiler, but there will be those spikes that have really high defense, and most 4-star just aren't able to deal with them. But Click has like one of the best 4-star casters to deal with them, and with her skill 2 to also stun enemies, really handy. Haze is a backup choice, but I really wouldn't go with her most of the time. And Indigo is actually one of those operators that come in really handy. What's the class? I kind of forgot the class name, but the one that can charge up 3 balls and shoot them all at once, that one, really important to have. So if I must say, I would actually switch the position between Indigo and Haze. I would go Click, Indigo, and then Haze if it comes to the priority of operators that you should raise. So that's about it for medics. Obviously, there are a lot more medics that I really wanted to play with, but to recommend to you guys, these are the only few that I would actually highly recommend you guys to raise if you haven't yet. Next, we have medics. So obviously we're going to have Aya and Calcid with her IS specific module. I don't think there's any more to explain about those two. Armia Medic is actually a really important operator that you have actually raised. You do want to have skill 1 and skill 2 both M3, even though skill 1 seems like a really niche kind of a use case, but there are situations that you do want to use skill 1. So just have that in case. And obviously Warfarin for those buffs when you need damage buffs when you need to, and also good healing. Silence, you want her for the drone actually. There are some situations where you do need the ability to heal all over the map, especially in ending 4. Yes, ending 4. So having her raised will not be a bad idea. And then when it comes to the 4 stars, Pure Stream and Chestnut both have really good range and good healing if you must. Especially Pure Stream skill 2 is basically like Telopsis healing if you're only healing a single target. So really great choice to have. And then for your single target medic, just have Mir or Susuro, roughly about the same thing. You get the idea. So just have your 4-star medics ready as well, just in case you need them. Supporters. So out of all the 6 stars, I think Scotty Alter is the most obvious why she's here. So I think we can just gloss over her. Angelina is here just because there is one collectible, this hand, that allows her to deal insane damage to any enemy. So she definitely has to be here just for that sake. And Suzerain, I think, is quite obvious. Easy damage buff, and it works really well with most other operators anyway. And if you just happen to need to stall some time to buy yourself other operators some time to regenerate their skills, really handful. Virtuoso, I actually don't recommend the majority of the time. It is only when you don't have other operators like Shu to break the boss's mechanic, or let's say if you don't have other true damage operators like Calcid, or if you don't have that, then you probably go with Virtuoso plus Nymph, and that's the only use case. And it's really rare for you to be using that. You just want to have her just in case. Like, and I don't know, you just got a really bad run and you don't have other operators that you need, and out of no choices, you pick up Virtuoso and Nymph, and that's your only bet. So just keep her in case you need her, and have her leveled. And then the 5 stars would be Chimère and Quercus. Chimère, I think, is really obvious. You just want that decreased defense on some of the boss fights. Really nice to have. And Quercus, you actually do want to have leveled just for the extra healing ability. And I understand that obviously we're going to get Armia really easily because she comes in 3 different class tickets. So the chance of you not even getting Armia is really low. But you actually do want Quercus in some specific stages, because the way the stage is shaped and where you need the healing is a bit wider. So you do want Quercus just for that. And Deep Color is just to bait a lot of enemy mechanics, like boss mechanics. So yes, she is even useful until like basically the very end. So Deep Color is basically the 4-star supporter of choice instead of Pedenker like we used to have. That is supporters. And at last, specialist. So I think my most used specialist would be Yato Alta. I think just having Yato Alta in your team just carries you through majority of the content, like basically till the boss fight. And even in boss fights, she's pretty useful most of the time. Ella, on the other hand, is just one of those operators that is versatile, as I explained in the Should You Pull Ella video. You know, she has good damage by herself. Her mind can be pretty useful. You can use her to buff, you can use her to damage, lots of things at the same time. Texas Alter actually goes down a little bit in my opinion, just because, well, you can stun a lot of enemies, but not enough damage kinda brings her down a little bit. And then Weedy is just one of those operators where if you're willing to learn how to use her in all these stages, she's really strong, as per usual, right? But, you know, how many of us are willing to study all these stages? So she naturally has to go down a little bit when it comes to my ranking. But she's still really strong in IS5, no question with that. And that's the 6 stars that you'll be going with. And then you want Red because of her AoE stun, and also being a quick redeploy. You actually do want quick redeploys a lot of the time. That's why Gravel is also on the list. So Red and Gravel, both really nice to have. Ethan, on the other hand, is like out of this world tier. It's like he's like one of the best 4 stars that you will be grabbing, and you will definitely be wanting to grab Ethan most of the time. Like you would most likely not go that well if you don't have Ethan yet. So highly recommend, if you don't have Ethan, grab him, raise him up. Just for this, it's perfect. It's totally worth it. Having that AoE bind, and then plus the fact that you get a lot of collectibles. Remember that I keep mentioning that. He's super strong. Trust me, his AoE bind, his AoE damage as well, all works really well in IS5. So that would be all the operators that I would recommend in IS5. Obviously this is just for now. We're going to get new operators down the road. I'll mention them one by one when we do the Should You Pull videos. And obviously, like I said again, you can use your own operators that you like. Just try things out yourself if you must. Also, this is mostly for post DLC, but pre DLC, the experience is actually really easy, so you might not feel the need of this list. But when later on we get our first new boss fight, and then even the second one with all these like really nasty new stages, that's when these kind of lists really come in. So if you want, you can come back to this video later down the road when you actually find that after the DLC it gets a bit challenging. But you know, maybe at the start you're like, oh, this is so easy, I can just figure all of this out myself. So you can definitely just do that. And that would be it for this list. I might do another list just for the squads, because the squads this time around is also really interesting, but I'll have to do that on the CN account because there's actually some new squads that are coming down the road with DLCs. I want to mention them as well, so that might be a coming video. But I'll see you guys in the next IS video, most likely, because, you know, I have a lot to talk about when it comes to IS5. And I'll see you guys then. Bye.